Wir kommen jetzt in den Genuss von einer Frau, die zu den inspirierendsten Frauen in der Tech-Welt gehört und wirklich in der Tech-Welt, also ganz global gesehen. Sie ist Gründerin von Rails Girls unter anderem. Das ist eine Initiative, in der in ganz, ganz vielen Städten dieser Welt, es sind über 200 junge Frauen im Programmieren ausgebildet werden. Sie hat auch eine Kinderbuchreihe, die heißt Hello Ruby, wo sie die skurrile Welt der Computer etwas genauer erklärt. Und sie war und ist immer wieder unterwegs, weil sie eben allen und der ganzen Welt erzählen möchte, dass Computer Science eben für alle da ist. Sie war dieses Jahr schon in New York, in San Francisco, in Brüssel, in Tokio und heute ist sie hier und wir freuen uns sehr. Linda Liukas.
Yeah. My name is Linda. I'm a children's book author, I'm an illustrator, I'm a mediocre programmer, and I'm learning to become an educator. And this here is a love letter to the computer. Being in love with a computer is not the most usual thing. Usually people think of computers rather through hate and frustration and annoyance. But truly, my love letter with the computer, it started with the idea that computers are actually about the people who build them. And when I was learning programming, the first time these things started to make sense to me, they clicked to me, was when I was studying a programming language called Ruby. And every time I didn't understand something about the jargon of computer science, words like object-oriented programming or functional programming, I would try to do a little doodle, a little character of a girl called Ruby, and try to explain what these complicated concepts mean through the eyes of a 6-year-old. And my kind of overarching philosophy around teaching computer science to the children started with this idea. If code is the next universal language, if our children are going to be learning English, Chinese, and JavaScript as their first foreign languages in school, instead of grammar classes, we ought to be teaching poetry lessons. And what I mean with that idea is we don't learn a natural language only by practicing the grammar rules, by conjugating irregular verbs. We learn a language by using it, by singing it, by dancing it, by flirting in it. And in the same way, if we truly believe that technology is as foundational as we think it is, we ought to be giving a more diverse set of tools for the next generation in learning this. And I do this through stories, because stories are the way we humans have always learned about ourselves, about each other, and about the world surrounding us. And I realized that there was no one really telling these stories about the world of software that was really changing our world rapidly. So nowadays, I write books about code, I write books about how computers work, I write books about how computers talk to each other, so what the internet is about. And the latest book that just came out 2 weeks ago in German has to do with machine learning and AI and how computers are changing our societies. All aimed for 6-year-olds, but really there's something for the adults to learn too. And the latest project I released is called Love Letters to a Computer, which is intended exactly for this audience, the curious and creative teachers. It's a 10-part video series that introduces the world of computer science through beautifully done videos. And the idea was to shoot these videos in the style as if Wes Anderson or Sofia Coppola had just fallen in love with the computer. And there was a bunch of lessons that I learned while shooting these videos. First of them was that we rarely get to talk about the pioneers and the people who have shaped the industries and the fields we work in. I think I completely actually disagree with the previous speaker who said that we shouldn't be looking for the history to find answers. I think we totally should revisit some of the champions like Maria Montessori, Loris Malaguzzi, Seymour Papert, and look at the wisdom they've had in their days. But we should make the circle bigger and have these people who have inspired at least me meet up with these people who have really truly changed the world. Those of Alan Turing, John von Neumann, Ada Lovelace, Claude Shannon, and realize that these two categories of people, the pedagogicians and the engineers, have a lot in common. They all dream big. They all have some sort of a vision of the future. And my hope is to kind of bridge people between these two chasms together. And all in all, I'm really happy that there is this big momentum happening towards learning to code. But what we're dealing with here goes much, much further than just learning to code. I think what we're doing right now is we're preparing this next generation of children for a world where so many of the problems around us are computer problems. Problems of health, energy, nutrition, climate change. And we will need a much more diverse, a radically more diverse group of people to get excited about computers as a tool of self-creation and as a tool of problem solving. So how are we going to do that? Well, all of you here in the room, as pedagogists, as educators, you know that you can't teach an entirely organized new intellectual discipline by offering people pre-organized vocabularies and concepts. We know that true learning is grounded in action, and that's what we need to do to computer science. This is a quote often attributed to a computer scientist called Edgar Dijkstra. And he says that computer science is no more about computers than astronomy is about telescopes. Computer science as a word, it makes us think that what computer scientists do is study the computer in the same way as a physicist studies the physical phenomenon of the world, as a chemist studies the chemical phenomenon of the world. But that's not true. A computer scientist uses the computer to solve the big problems in the world or to express themselves. And that's why we need more ballerinas, more biologists, more artists, more scientists to embrace the computer. And to make that happen, we need a completely new kind of pedagogy in teaching these concepts. So I'm going to walk you really quickly through one way of explaining the word algorithm. And I hope that this kind of thinking will be applied across the different difficult words and concepts of computer science. So algorithm. I just felt an energy from the audience where some of you felt, oh, I should know what an algorithm is. I really should. I just know it has something to do with finance sector, something to do with Facebook. Well, the children I work with, they feel very confident saying that an algorithm is a step-by-step sequence to solve a problem. And we start by practicing an algorithm where one of the children is the computer and the other one is the programmer. And the programmer's task is to teach the computer how to brush its teeth. And we laugh a lot, we make a lot of mistakes, and we realize that programmers, they start by defining problems and breaking them apart. So first of all, we need to define what a toothbrush is. Then we need to instruct the computer to move its hand towards your face and stop moving its hand when it hits the mouth. And then we realize that, oh, sure, we forgot the toothpaste. And we realize that the toothpaste has a cork, which means that somehow we need to open up the toothpaste, and so forth and so forth. And through an activity like this, the children learn, first of all, that programming is not lonely. We even have a special word we call pair programming, which means that programmers in the modern days, they work in groups. It's not lonely. It's not the cowboy working alone in the basement. Programming is social. They learn about debugging, the fact that no one writes perfect code at the first go, that you need to go through iterations and rounds of experiments in order to write code. And this is so common that we even have a special word for it, which is debugging, having the patience to go through your mistakes and fix them. And finally, they learn that programming is highly creative. If the previous speaker spoke about innovations coming in many forms and colors, I think this is the beauty of programming. If I go to a classroom and ask for a toothbrushing algorithm, I'll get 50 different kinds of algorithms. Some of them are more elegant, some of them are more efficient, some of them are easier to modify. But the beauty of programming is that it's more a craft than a science, and it makes it highly creative. But this is not enough. We need more. We can't just leave understanding of an algorithm to this level. And to go further into the word algorithm, I do this activity, where I show the children 5 numbers, and I ask them to put these numbers in order of magnitude. And it takes the children roughly between 6 to 8 minutes to do this. And then I asked them to do the same with these numbers, and then the same with these numbers. And by this point, the kids grumble. They say, Linda, this takes too much time. This is too complicated. And I say, this was your first lesson of the day. Never compete with a computer on a task like this. Computers will always be faster, more efficient, make less mistakes than you. But they still need instructions, and those instructions are written by you. So a way a computer would approach a problem like this is here. It would start from the beginning, and it would compare 1 and 56, and it would say 56 is bigger than 1. Let's keep it like this. It would move to the second pair, compare 56 to 4, say 4 is smaller than 56. Let's swap these around. It would keep moving, 56 and 70 looks okay, 70 and 20, let's swap these around. And then it would move all the way to the beginning and repeat this sequence of instructions over and over and over again, faster than human mind at the speed of electricity, until the numbers are in order. And this here is called the bubble sort algorithm. It's like a working horse algorithm designed in the 1960s or the 70s, still powering many of the services we use every single day. But this still is not enough. So we've looked at the concept of an algorithm through play. We've looked at the more mathematical side of an algorithm. And then finally, we need to somehow ground the learning in action. So we look at a search engine. And I asked the children, so where is the algorithm hiding in the search engine? And the kids say, maybe the ads. And I say, yeah, the ads are designed or decided by an algorithm that takes into account your browsing history, your location, your demographic data, and tries to show you relevant ads. And also the order in which you see the updates, those are designed by an algorithm. What about a social networking side? Where is the algorithm hiding? And the kids say, ads. And I say, yes. But also the order in which you see your friends' updates. Those are decided by an algorithm that optimizes for retention. So how long you stay on the website. And it tries to make guesses of whose updates you would like to see. And then finally, we look at YouTube. And by this point, the kids are already pros. They say, oh, the algorithms are the ads. And the algorithms are the autofill. So when you type something into YouTube, it recommends or tries to make a guess of what you're searching for. And the suggested next videos. But more and more, interestingly, also the kinds of videos that get produced are designed by and for an algorithm. Because I asked the children, how many of you have seen something weird online, something like that doesn't quite make sense, like surprise Play-Doh X, Peppa Pig, Stamper Cars, Pocoyo Minecraft video? And the children say, yeah. And I say, you know, that's because every 1 minute, there's 400 hours of YouTube content being uploaded on YouTube. And there's no way a human can go through all of that. So we need an algorithm. And it turns out that there's these whole Eastern European content farms that just generate content that is geared towards the algorithm, not the human child. And this is the scary side of algorithms. When these technical devices are starting to permeate our societies and changing the way our children consume content and the way they see the world. And this is the whole length of technology that we should be teaching when we talk about a simple concept like an algorithm. We should be talking about what are the things that we humans do really well, what are the things computers do really well. And these things keep changing. There's this wonderful website called deepindex.org that lists all the new things computers can nowadays do. They can save the bees, they can diagnose skin cancer, they can assist the crew of the ISS. When you go through this list, you're starting to get this tingling feeling that, whoa, I want to have a computer by my side. This kind of a pair or like a sidekick that can do all these different things. But it requires quite a lot of confidence, self-reflection, and ability to distinct between what humans are good at and what computers are good at in order to work. So I'm going to finish up with the last few stories. I think the word technology is really interesting because there's so many different definitions. And one of the recent definitions I've really loved comes from a Spanish philosopher, José Ortega y Gasset, who says that technology is the production of superfluities, today as in the Paleolithic era. That is why animals are atechnical. They are content with the simple act of living. And if I understand this correctly, what Ortega y Gasset is saying is that technology and imagination have something to do together. People are technical because they have the ability to imagine a future where something new is possible. But that doesn't feel to be happening right now, where most of the stories and narratives we tell around technology are deeply dystopian. They show our inability to imagine plausible futures where technology might be a positive change to the world. How many of the episodes of Black Mirror have you seen where there's anything good happening out there? How many recent movies where technology would play somehow a positive, pragmatic, and optimistic part of the world? And I think our children, they deserve more. This generation of little Greta Thunbergs growing up are already resentful, they are already angry, but they are the ones who need to be building the future technology. And again, if we look at the history of technology, we can look at the Steve Jobses and Bill Gates and not imagine that the computer just landed from the sky to the earth, but these were people who were surrounded by culture, which just happened to be the optimistic Northern Californian man to the moon, civil rights, hippie movement of California, where they ended up creating the Macintosh and the PC. And what is the cultural environment where this generation is growing up in? Not very similar, not very optimistic. So we need more utopian fiction, more stories about plausible futures with technology. And I'm going to end up with things that I would want to teach the children. If I were to write a love letter to a computer, I would teach kids to be curious. I would teach them to be fearless when it comes to technology. I would want them to have a sense of wonder when it comes to technology. And finally, I would want them to have an agency over what is happening in our world. A few months ago, I read this story on Guardian about a bunch of Oxford University researchers who had shown children two sets of pictures. One set of the pictures had pictures of Pokemons, so, like Pikachus and the Bulbasaurs and so forth. And then one set of the pictures had things from the natural world, those of plants and trees and animals. And by far, the children were much, much better at identifying the Pokemon. They had more vocabulary to describe Pikachu than the birch tree. They knew Bulbasaur better than the badger. And the researchers were really worried because what happens in our world when we don't have vocabulary to describe what is happening around us? And I worry about this too. I worry that we lack understanding of the natural world around us. But I also think the same thing is happening in the world of technology, where we have so many of these suitcase words that pack a lot inside of them but let very little out, words that we throw from one person to another like a suitcase, never to be unpacked. Words like algorithm, machine learning, Bitcoin, blockchain. And I think we need to start opening up these suitcases. So let's take a simple word like the internet. Once there was a little boy who came to me and said, "Is, Linda, the internet a place?" And I say, "Oh dear, no. The internet is this planetary interconnected network of servers. You can think of it like the global village or the information superhighway. You can go surfing online." And then I realized, oh no, I sound like a kid of the 1990s. That was my internet. This child, he has never pressed the disconnect button on the modem. He has never heard the sound. The internet is something invisible everywhere around him, and we need to update our metaphors really quickly. So is the internet the fiber optic cables that go from the bottom of the sea all the way to space? Or is internet the server farms that store more and more of our data? Or should I talk about the data? How there's protocols that govern how data travels around the world 8 times in a second? Or should I talk about the cat videos, the funny memes, the Gangnam styles that occur when 4 billion of us can have a conversation with one another, the explosion of creativity we see? And this is your challenge as teachers. You're not only teaching the hardware side of things. This here is a computer, and there's a mouse, and there's keyboard, and there's a screen, and beware of screen time. You're not only teaching the software side of things. This is how you learn to code. And you're not only teaching the societal side of things. Beware of fake news. Recognize algorithmically generated content. You're teaching all these three things at the same time. And they keep changing all the time. And we need to really reinvent and rediscover the way we should be teaching computer science to the next generation. And luckily, we have inspiration, and that inspiration comes from history. I'm going to end by showing a poem by Reggio Emilia founder Loris Malaguzzi. And I bet many of you are very familiar with the Reggio Emilia model, the early childhood pedagogy from northern Italy. And when they realized after the Second World War that they had completely destroyed a generation of children and needed to reinvent the municipal system to better suit future citizens, they didn't write a strategy paper, they didn't write a vision paper, they wrote a poem. And the poem says that the child has 100 languages to express themselves. They have the language of singing, of dancing, of crawling, of sculpting. And I believe if Loris Malaguzzi lived today, he would say coding and computer science, one more language of the child. But so often we schools say that no, you have the language of reading and writing. But luckily, the children know better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Linda. Very inspiring. I was just imagining if tomorrow all these teachers tell their students to write a love letter to a computer. Huh? Would be interesting to read the collection.